Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Katrina Trigg. Now at the age of 21, Katrina began experiencing a series of transformative spiritual awakenings that radically changed the course of her life. Now she'll discuss her journey and her guides that call themselves the Wisdom Keepers and much more. Katrina Trigg, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for coming on. And I appreciate you reaching out to connect to us and to want to tell your story. It's going to be an interesting interview. Now, just to go straight to what you do right now. So, right now, you'd call yourself a sort of an intuitive, a channeler.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I would definitely call myself an intuitive guide, a channeler, and a spiritual teacher as well.
Right. Okay. And sort of how long has that been going on for you? How long have you been doing that sort of full time?
I've been doing that for 2 years. And obviously, I've been interested in spirituality for about 12, 14 years now. But it hasn't been until recently that it's been a predominant feature in my life.
Okay. What was that moment when you said, I'm going to, do this full time. This is my purpose in a sense.
Yeah, it wasn't it almost wasn't a decision in a way. I felt almost compelled, like I needed to do it. And I started super small. I just put up like a little meetup group online, and I would meet up in coffee shops with people. And as much as it was, a strange thing to do on a Thursday night, I felt like I needed to do it. And the more I did it, I just felt like it was super aligned with my path and my purpose.
And were you sort of influenced? You must have been. Well, we're going to get into your journey, and I know there was a lot of influence that took place in the pursuing years after you sort of healed yourself in a sense, and we'll go over that just very quickly. But what was the main inspiration, would you say, to channel?
Yeah, you know what, it started really naturally for me. It was in the darkest times of my life where I would pull out my journal and I would start this kind of like question response. And I would say, why am I in this situation? Why am I dealing with this? And the response I would get back at first would be like, oh, just another egoic Katrina response. And then all of a sudden, as I kept doing it, the words almost started to transform as I was writing them. And the word even like, dear Katrina, like I would never call myself dear Katrina, started to appear on the page. And it was just this loving message that started to come out. And so that was, that has been happening for years and years. And then there was a pinnacle moment in my 30s where I literally was at my wit's end. And I did the same thing. I wrote it down because that was kind of my process with dealing with stuff. I write down the issue, and I just felt like I couldn't keep up with writing. And so I started speaking it aloud. And that was the first time when the name The Wisdom Keepers came in. And even the first, like for however long that I did it in the beginning, that was like my process. I didn't truly understand it, or I didn't even truly believe it almost to begin with.
Right, right. And who did you share that with initially? I mean, was there any sort of support around you when you started to do that?
Yeah, my best friend, and she's also kind of on the same path as me, and so I shared it with her. But it wasn't until like a few months after that I was like, you have to listen to this. I've been recording myself and she was like, no, that's channeling. That's full blown channeling. And I knew what it was, but it was just, sharing it with someone was something that was very private at first. And yeah, so it really just started as my own personal little process to begin with.
Okay, let's go a little bit further back here then. Let's go to a point in your life where, now, am I right to say is that you were diagnosed with some sort of tumor as well back in the day?
Yeah. So growing up, I love sports first and foremost, and I couldn't play sports. I couldn't, run from here to like the other side of the soccer field without gasping for breath. And so I was told growing up that I had asthma. And so I was on every steroid for asthma that you could dream up. And finally, at 14 years old, I was so skinny, so sick, so tired, so lethargic. My dad was like, "Something is wrong with this girl." And he took me into the hospital, and they wanted to admit me that night. They were so scared of how low my oxygen levels were. And I actually had this 7-pound tumor crushing my lungs and my heart. And yeah, so I was put into surgery about a day later, and it was a pretty amazing anomaly. And the fact that I even was able to have it removed was this amazing, amazing thing. And that really, it's a huge thing to deal with when you're 14 years old. And it was also just a huge transformation from not being, lively, or like I didn't have any life to me. And then all of a sudden having this like life and this breath and all of this experience coming in at that time.
Right. Okay. And moving that forward then to sort of high school as well. I mean, you've talked publicly about, from that stage of entering high school, or kind of later high school, getting onto prescription drugs as well. And what was the escapism for that, do you think?
Yeah. So I think that the like having this tumor, having this experience of it being, removed, and then I just had this focus on this body now. Like it was like this body was the only thing that was keeping me tethered to the earth, this keeping me tethered to this experience. And so I just became hyper focused, first and foremost with my body and how it looks. And it's high school and you're a girl. So there's all of those things. And I was no longer feeding a tumor, a 7-pound tumor. So there was changes. I was gaining weight. And, there's just this other side too about, because I believe so wholly that I was this body and I had this one life, I needed to do it perfectly. And so, some people use prescription drugs to party and like stay up all night. I was using them to not eat and to stay skinny and to try to be perfect and try. It was like just this like control freak thing where I just wanted this life to look a certain way. And so that was one of the things that I was using. The weight of it all was so heavy, and I was looking for anything to kind of help me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah.
So so being smart, trying to be loved by your parents for that, and also, to have the right body image, absolutely. And there'll be so many other people who have done something along those lines as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
And how much we suffer silently, and because I had this like outward appearance that I needed to uphold, I couldn't speak to anyone about it. Even the shame of that would be just overwhelming. Like for me now to talk about it, thinking about that back then would be absolutely, it was unspeakable.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how did you get off those prescription drugs, and what was the key to that?
Yeah. And it was probably, in my 20s where I started finding yoga. And it was almost like I couldn't take another prescription pill. I had thrown the pills down the toilet in like some dramatic, finished them like 5 times, trying to give it some drama to the ending. And it was like I physically, I felt like my body couldn't take them anymore. I was getting so sick from them. I actually, in the very beginning, or not the very beginning, but towards the end, I became jaundiced from taking so many prescription drugs. So I was in the hospital. And again, even then in the hospital, I would not admit that I was on these drugs. And that's what it was. Like my body was just shutting down. And so that happened simultaneously with me finding yoga. And that was a little bit of an escape.
So I understand that when a yoga teacher of yours, I think his name was John,
Yeah.
kind of, touched your heart space in a sense. He was basically saying that it was tight, that it wasn't open to receiving, and that it was, where was the love for yourself in a sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So I love this moment because the first thing he says to me, he goes, "You're tight in here." And I go, "Oh God, I am?" Like, "Oh, I need to do some more like heart opening poses." Like so embarrassed that I wasn't a perfect yogi in his eyes. And he goes, no, like you got it all wrong. And then he just filled me with this energy. And it was, you would call it like Shaktipat in Hindu or Sanskrit would be the word. And it just filled me with this energy that I had never experienced before. And it was almost like I just saw for the first time. And so from there, it was, as soon as I was filled with that, I couldn't go back. I had to find out what that was.
Right. And so that sort of started a 10-year journey then. And
So,
what was some of that 10-year journey, would you say? I mean, were you attending all sorts of different, classes and spiritual, teachers in a sense, books, whatever it was, consuming all sorts?
yeah, yeah. And I like to call it like my on again, off again relationship with spirituality. And I think a lot of us have experienced this. We're like 1 week or in the evenings, we're super spiritual, but at work, we're not. And it was like, I was all in. I was going to like yoga retreats, readings, channelings. I was really trying to figure this out. But on the other hand, I was also still trying to uphold this perfect persona. I was into my career now. And so it was just the weight of it. And, during that time, how do you deal with both of those? I was, trying to deal with it. And then I turned to alcohol a lot for those 10 years too. Got away with the prescription drugs, chose a new drug of choice.
And that was that quite excessive towards the end of the 10 years, do you think?
Oh yeah, I was drunk more than I was sober towards the end of those 10 years. Yeah, and still functioning somehow.
Wow. Could family tell towards the end, or?
And that was it. It was when I couldn't hold it together. And that's what happens, right? Like addiction, I couldn't hold it together anymore. I couldn't hide it anymore. And that was rock bottom for me. And that was where I had to admit that this was not working. Upholding this life that everyone, or I thought everyone expected for me, was the thing I needed to surrender. This whole idea of this life that I had created in my mind.
What was that life as well? I mean, job wise, what were you doing?
Oh, I wanted to be the top. I wanted to be top of my career, best in, I was in marketing and branding. I wanted to be the best at that. I wanted to be skinny. I wanted to have the perfect husband, the perfect house, all those things that I think a lot of us grapple with. And so, it just, I realized, and it was like my soul was just crying out to me saying, that's not it. That is not it.
Yeah, I mean, was that a different relationship you had back then as well?
A different relationship.
Personal relationship than what you've got now.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and obviously you're in this very dark place then, I guess, in so many different
Yeah.
ways. Yeah. Well, would you say
Yeah.
that was the dark night of your soul so far?
Yeah. It was. I was done. Like, it was. I couldn't do it anymore. It was that or death. Like I had nothing left because wanted to be perfect at everything, and I was trying to hold everything up. I think I tried every self-help book I read. I went to every psychologist. I went to all these things, and it was like, I can't stop drinking. I can't stop feeling depression. I can't stop feeling alone. And so what do I do?
Were you looking for some of those qualities in your partner at the time, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I would hop relationships. I would be all in, hop into one relationship. This was it. Oh, not working. See ya. Next relationship. See ya. And it was, wherever you go, there you are.
There you are. That's right. That's right. But then, so there must have been a time of like something snapped, right? And
Yeah,
not just your temper, but I mean, it was this almost this aha moment that you had. So tell us about that.
yeah. And it was Christmas, which if we've all been through Christmases with our families, they're difficult times, and I was drunk. like the entire Christmas. And I, starting a new year, and I felt like I could not do a new year. That was it. It was like New Year's Eve. And so um, that was the night where everything cracked. And I told, my fiance at the time, I just said, I am an alcoholic. I don't know what to do with myself at this time. And I had to go off into a room, and I was like, how do I tell work that I need like a month off just to like to grieve was the word I used. And because I went through this process where I had to let go of all of these things that I thought made me me.
And what were some of them? So I mean, alcohol, yeah, okay, that was just numbing it down, but
Yeah,
that's
that
not,
was
yeah, that's,
stomach. But
yeah.
this I being a daughter, being a perfect daughter, being a perfect fiance, being a perfect wife, being a perfect sister, all of these things that I had worked so hard that I believed made me Katrina were the things that were slowly killing me. And so once I had stripped that down, it's like, well, what is left? What is left inside of that? And I had to strip that down. And so this grieving process, I would get in my car and I would drive for like 6 hours, and I would record all of these things that I had been holding on to. And just like, it was almost like I was like pulling out all of these beliefs that I had, and kind of letting them go. And it was like months of this that I went through this grieving process. And at the end, I was left with this feeling of coming into my knowing, and coming into this truth of me that was way deeper than anything surface level.
But
And it was kind of it. Go
did you
ahead.
ever think of that truth before? Had you ever considered it? And which truth do you mean? That you're more than your body, that there is something else going on?
Yeah, yeah. It was, if I am not all these things that I am, Katrina, then what is left? And it was me investigating that piece of what was left that actually proved to me. I expected there to be nothing, right? Like that was what I went into this process expecting. And instead I found everything. I found this profound truth, this profound freedom, this profound love that was always inside of me. But I had blanket covered it with all of these misbeliefs of who I was. And so it was this, and it's the unspeakable, right?
Yes, I was
It's
going to
the
get you
thing.
to put it into words, but yeah, maybe
Yeah, it's
we'll be here
it's
forever.
like the jewel, where I could describe the facets of the jewel, but you'd never experience it yourself unless you saw the jewel. Or it's like eating an orange. I could tell you what it's like to eat an orange, but until you've experienced eating an orange, you don't know what that is.
But why did that experiencing allow you to become the person that you are now? And we'll get into that. But even, and what stopped you from going back into the person you was? Just because you experienced it, what stopped you from going back to those old habits?
Yeah, one of the things I said when I kind of had this experience was, I didn't believe it. I spent 12 years, 10 years, whatever it was, reading these books, going to yoga, chanting, all of these things, but there was no part of me that trusted it, believed it, that knew it. And that is the word. I didn't know it. And so, although these experiences, you go to yoga class, we are oneness, we are one, you hear it. But until I experienced it, there was no part of me that knew it.
So once you had experienced this aha moment that we're all connected, we're all, that was it. You're never gonna go back. What sort of person are you now then? Do you react to things?
Yeah,
If I was to speak, to someone that knew you, would they say that's not who she really is?
yeah,
People
no,
will say that about me. Don't worry. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, and totally. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely pious and perfect
There
now,
you go.
so
There you go.
that's really great. Absolutely not. And there are so many parts of me from my past that creep in. Like there's so many parts of me that are, that those misbeliefs are so deep that they are there still. But every time I encounter a misbelief, any time I encounter suffering now, I have the ability to go into my knowing and release it. And I never had that before.
When you say
And
release it, how do you release it? Sorry to butt in, but how do you do that?
yeah, no, it is. I use this example of like you live this like ego life, right? You live in this world and you're separate and you're bouncing around and you're experiencing things. It's like you're looking through this like little tiny looking glass. And when things happen in this little tiny looking glass, they're a big deal, right? Like in those moments, they're a big deal because you're alone in this looking glass having this experience. And so when I hit that, and I come here very often, but I have this ability now to go open and open up to this knowing. And in that knowing tells me that I am everything, that I am infinite, that this is a momentary perception. And just coming into that releases me from that hooking in to the reactionary state. I still react. I still, go through the processes, but now I have this system or this inner knowing that allows me to come in, come out, and move differently in this world.
Okay, so let's put you in a scenario. You're around people now who do not think the same way as you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're angry, they're triggering you, whatever the situation may be, right? How do you deal with that then in that perspective for what you just said? The same thing?
Yeah, yeah, but this is the word forgiveness comes in, but it's the realizing that you know the experience that they're having is the exact same, momentary perception. They're blocked into this right now, but the essence of them is no different than the big essence of me. And it just brings so much compassion. I can be in that, I can think of a scenario at work where you're sitting in a room and someone's, angry with you, and you could jump right into that and defend, but you could also move into this space of knowing, of this oneness, and then you move in that moment. And I find every time I do that, I move differently in the world. I move with compassion, I move with understanding, I move with forgiveness. And so the practice is incredibly simple, but the process and I guess not the process, but the layers that we have and the misbeliefs we have are so numbered. We have so many of them that that the practice is just a continuous thing. It's like going to yoga class to be able to touch my toes. When I practice, I'm more into it and I stay in it, and we fall out of it and then we come back in.
Do you think Eckhart Tolle kind of found the same space as well? Probably did,
Yeah,
didn't he? Yeah. Hmm.
I think all spiritual texts, all of them lead back to this. This is, the knowing, the profound, spiritual essence that we're searching for.
I mean, it can be hard for some people who have been through tragic circumstances, right? Where they've either been attacked in some way, or it's whatever it may be that's terrible. To try to get into that space, they may not be ready to even hear such words. But I think what you're saying is, if they could see it from a different perspective, it would be so much healing for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, and some of those traumatic events are invitations to this, to see this. And it's hard in those moments when I did not think it was an invitation that night when I'm like sitting in my bathroom floor crying. I did not think at that time, this is a great invitation. but I look back and I go, every traumatic experience that I have been through has been this incredible invitation to freedom.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think if it works for you, that's perfect. Maybe other people can find that freedom through other ways as well. This is just one way that we're sort of, talking about here, of
Yeah,
course.
there's many paths to God as there are souls on earth, and it is, And that's the other thing I talk about is, channeling is part of my path. And there are many things along my path that are my signposts to this, right? But we don't need to worship the signposts. We don't need to worship the hand that points to the moon, as Lao Tzu says. It's more about, it's whatever that is for us that brings us to this space of knowing and peace. That's ultimately what we're looking for, of love, of true love.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think a lot of people are looking for love outside of them and they want it from someone else?
Absolutely.
And,
And that's everything.
yeah, do you think that's destructive, or do you think that's just a natural way that we are, and that's what we need, or is there a better way than that?
I think it's ego's way. I think it's the way of this world, right? We think that we're going to find that thing outside of us. And that was me for years and years. I thought I was going to find that thing. And the way it goes is you go up the hill, you get to the top, you get the thing you want, and then you just kind of drops off. And and I, did that so many times where you think, when I get that thing, then I will be happy. Then I will be fine. But there was this piece of me that was just like, no, that's not it. You're missing it. And that piece of me, I was trying to like quiet that down, fill it with alcohol, whatever that is. I can't deal with that right now because I need to be really great at my career. But yeah.
So what point was it when you sort of left the career that you were doing? Mind you, you said 2 years ago, didn't you? So you've already answered that. I think it was a sort of 2 year. You've been doing this for 2 years now, the channeling.
Yeah.
Previously, yeah, you would, yeah, okay. Well, let me ask you it from this perspective then. So, what was the trigger for you to say, like, okay, I've done this previous career, now I'm gonna walk into a new path, basically.
Yeah, and in the same way that I felt compelled to start groups on Thursday nights, it was just, to do this publicly was a huge leap for me. Um, and I think it was, there's so much that I have been through that I think needs to, one, be normalized and to be talked about. And two, I think channeling too needs to be, I felt like it was a thing that I almost felt just as ashamed of as I was of the alcohol and as I was of the drugs in the
Yes,
beginning.
yes, yes. I always said a few years ago, and I maybe have still said it. It is on the fringe of even spirituality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In some respects, even though it's a lot more common nowadays, maybe it's a sort of more accepted thing in America. I don't know, or maybe there's just more channels because America's just a bigger country. Do you know what I mean? Canada's quite big as well, and there are some good channelers over there. And definitely speaking to an up and coming one right now with yourself. Um, what is special, would you say, about channeling compared to what else you could have done with helping people?
Yeah, I think channeling takes the equation of me out of it, or like takes me out of the equation, said differently. Um, and it's almost like this I'm allowed, or I'm able to step aside, and you're getting this direct connection with this loving nature and this loving information. And I think sometimes, you don't want to hear my story, but you'd love to just hear the true connection. And I think that's the really nice thing about channeling. And I think every time I bring in the wisdom keepers, I am profoundly amazed at the message that they have, and that it is just coming out of me in the most loving way. And I couldn't have thought of these great analogies that they're using. And so I think there's just and there's an energy that comes with it as well. When you are in a room with a channeler, the whole energy changes. And so it's not only this experience of listening, it's also this experience of changing. And I think part of this whole process of undoing our misbeliefs is also shaking up our bodies and changing, the frequency and what is allowed in our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how has your partner, that you're with now, how has he accepted what you're doing as well? And has he been supportive? And what's that been like?
Yeah, yeah. It's It's one of the most frequent questions that I get, actually. It was like, how do you deal with, like, is your partner part of this? He is super supportive, right? And I wouldn't say that he is into it or, wants to be a part of all of this, but he is here to support me through all of it. And I think, that's the thing we need. I've seen many relationships, and I've been through many relationships where I judge the person for not being like me, not believing what I believe, or not knowing what I know, or not seeing or understanding what I understand. And as long as we're supportive, for one another, that's the real big crux of it, right? We don't want to be each other.
No, no, we don't. And yeah, that I'm sure there's lots of people, that find that difficult to begin with. I bet they do.
Yeah,
I bet they do.
yeah.
But has that acceptance that you speak about there come from because you're in that space now of just, you know, um, that heart space that you're coming from, that, everything's connected. You see the bigger picture. There is no judgment, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a big, and that's been a big process for me too in my relationship. That I am in the perfect place that I need to be in right now, and I know that because that's where I am. And it seems this big leap of faith to see that, but for me, it's this like fundamental knowing now. And where before I was trying to shake up my life and change things and be different and be better, now it's kind of like a melting into this, and loving and accepting and appreciating where I'm
Yeah.
at.
And who chooses the questions to ask the wisdom keepers? Is that something that you do yourself? You think about what you really would like to, put on a video? How does that work?
Yeah. I think I've had a few questions from people, but I feel like I have weekly themes in my life. And so I kind of, I try and bring in a little bit of what I'm experiencing. And I'm experiencing things just as everyone else is. I have difficulties like, do I eat organic food? Do I not? And I go, okay, well, what's the answer to that? And it seems like this trivial thing, but the answer that I get from the wisdom keepers is like this profound knowledge of coming into your knowing and moving from that space. And it's like, oh, I forgot again. I was, working in the world from here as opposed to here. And so I bring in kind of topics on mostly on what I'm feeling that week.
And when you say again, coming into your knowing, as in that's almost like saying, well, come up with the answer yourself. Go within, and
Yeah.
and then you're in your knowing. Then
Yeah. Yeah.
just want to say one thing as well. I noticed behind you that obviously there's a Course in Miracles book, and I know that that's something that you've been studying. What got you into studying that text, and what do you think it's doing for you right now?
Yeah. I bought it 7 years ago, and I thought it was a perfect doorstop because I hated it. I absolutely hated the text. I thought it was the worst thing I've ever read. It was all of this religious jargon and talked about this God figure, masculine God figure, something that I had thrown away, my whole life. I was trying to get away from that. And so it wasn't until I was in that really, really dark place that it came to me, that I like literally came into my inbox, like Audible was like, you need to listen to this. You need to, and it was just everywhere. And so I was like, okay, I got to read this. I got to read this text. And it has been a profound experience. It's, within it, there's 365 days of lessons. And so I just decided, in that dark time, that okay, this is the thing that's showing up. And so I did the lessons, and it was I think just the most profound experience, and it's a channeled book itself.
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I
so
got I got to meet some of the people that well, one of the people that's um met, people that were part of that book, do you know what I mean? And yeah, it's still helping so many people right now, even yourself, which is great. Um Yeah, and I kind of was into the old Esther Hicks a little bit at one point, but I've just not had the time to do watch anything like that just recently, or not, or maybe not had the time, but not felt drawn to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I definitely was into Esther Hicks for a little bit, and I think that's the biggest thing, though, right? Like, is to go with what you're drawn to. If it is not the time, like that was not the time for me to read A Course in Miracles. But when it was, I was ravenous, and I just noticed that, like when it's the right message, I cannot get enough of it, and so I try not to judge of like, nah, that's not my book right now.
So we're going to link your YouTube channel below as well. And I came, had a look at the channel and some of the videos on there. And there was one video that I watched as well, the illusion of needs, or the illusion that we have to have needs in this world, right? Well, what about people in third world countries? I mean, don't they have, they have needs, and to have the illusion that we don't need anything. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll ask you that maybe. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just it. And that's, I always talk about how I'm trying to get us, and not me trying, but the wisdom keepers have been really working with me and through me to talk about this bigger oneness, this bigger, profound answer. And that one of the things we talked about too, one of the channelings that I have on there is that this world is an illusion. And so this statement, you might have heard, you've probably heard that it's a momentary perception. And so if God, if universe, if love, infinite love is big mind, then we are little mind within big mind having this experience. So we are kind of coming in and having this experience, but nothing has left big mind. Like nothing is outside of God. God is infinite. God is everything. And so even though it looks very clear like we have needs in this world, yes, we do, because this is the world of duality. This is the world of separation. This is the world where good and bad happen. But our truth is in this oneness. And so it's almost like we need to release our whole belief of the experiences almost we're having here. And I know that seems almost like, well, what, you're just going to forget about the world? It's like it's not quite like that. It's like it's almost like I always talk about how it's this circular knowing where you have to first go, okay, Brahman is everything, God is everything, and you're up here at the circle, and it's like, okay, only God exists. This world is an illusion is the next step. Okay, good. So you relinquish your needs of this world. And then the like closing of the circle is like, this world is Brahman. This world is everything. And so although this is an, illusory, momentary perception, it also lives within God. But we don't need to move in it with such a seriousness as we feel we do. We can move with love and compassion, but we don't need to move like this is the be all end all.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, there's things that we'd like to experience, obviously. But I guess that's different to a need. But then again, is it? I guess, that I would, you need certain things to get to, maybe to do something that you want to do. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
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 I was just trying to think of a good example.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I think we do feel, right? Like we feel compelled to do things, but at our truest essence, we need nothing. At our truest essence, we are infinite. At our truest essence, we are oneness. And so if we are moving in this life, knowing that, and that is the thing, is like we often, and that was me, I had no faith in that. There was no faith in that. But once that doorway was open where that was it, then I go, then you know how gurus in like the mountains, they laugh at their students, like they like giggle, like the laughing guru kind of thing. It's like the student would come with their problem and they go, oh, guru, help me, help me. And the guru would go, oh, it's so funny, and throw an orange at them or something. Right. And it's this thing where it's like we are taking it too seriously. And it's not to say that it's flippant or what that, it's just that we are so hooked into our separation that we cannot see the freedom that oneness brings.
That's a big statement. Yes, I'm kind of with you. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I am. I am. I mean, it's one thing saying it, it's another thing experiencing it, isn't it?
And that was it. When I said that sentence, when I was like, I didn't believe. I didn't. I did not believe. And there was like a parable. Jesus is in the boat, and the waves are rocking, and he says, all of his disciples are going, oh my gosh, what do we do? The waves are rocking. What do we do? And he's asleep at the bow, and he says to the waves, be still and be quiet. And the waves still. And all the disciples are like, what, who is he? What's happened here? And parables in the Bible aren't exact stories. That's not the story. Is that we are rocking in our boat, like we are rocking, and we are thinking that this is it. And until we come into that stillness, until we know that we have that power and we believe that we have that power, we will never still those waves. We'll be rocking in that boat forever.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, that's deep stuff. Absolutely. What sort of attachments have you got to things then, if that's the case then in your life? I mean, or should I say, you do you have attachments to anything much?
Yeah, I certainly do. But it was part of my part of the process that I went through. This like undoing was like, I am attached to my parents. I'm attached to, my husband, this house that I'm in. I'm very attached to it. And it's like this constant practice of going, wait. This is all finite. This world is only offering me the finite experience. And so I cannot put my faith in the finite. I cannot put my faith in the constantly changing, the dualistic world where one day it's good, one day it's bad. Because my experience of that was like, every time I did that, it felt like I was grasping and I was never getting it. And now, whenever I have those attachments, I see them. Well, I hope that I see them more clearly. And then I'm able to go, no, like that is not where I want to put my faith. I put my faith in my oneness. I put my faith in God. I put my faith in.
What does that look like from an outside perspective?
Nothing.
Right. Well, okay. Is it less conflicts?
Less conflicts, less. I live you live a calm, peaceful, trusting life until you don't again, and then you do the process.
Do you think you'd feel the same way if you had a child?
Yeah, I often think about that. I think that's also like, that would be a whole next level of attachment, right? Like that is ultimate attachment. Yeah. So I can't speak for that, but I can say that every time I come into my truth, every time I come into and I use that phrase because the phrase, that's all that really suits it. But I am given this freedom, when before I felt like I was clinging for everything, holding on to my life and holding everything. It's like I am totally carried.
Taken care of?
Yeah. And I need not, and that's the thing. That's back to your question of what your needs. Like you need nothing. And it seems like this crazy outlandish concept because we have been told our whole lives that we are separate. Since we were born, this experience has told us that we are separate. And so it's undoing every one of those beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lifetime's work sometimes to do that. Yeah. Um yeah, and I guess you did, and that's why that's what you're sort of teaching as well in a sense. Or you're yeah, well, it's part of your work, isn't it? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think um it has so profoundly revolutionized the way I feel, the way I experience this world, that I can't not share it.
So then what becomes true abundance for you in a sense then?
And that is it. That is true abundance, is knowing you are, it looks like you are giving up everything, right? Like that was the whole thing of it, was like giving up who I was meant that I was giving up everything I loved, my family, my house, like whatever it is that I thought made me me. But instead I was giving that up to instead receive everything, that I am infinite creation, that the truest essence of me is every experience. And so this exchange that looks like so bleak, and it looks very bleak to the ego, because yes, that separated experience needs to be laid down. But what you are exchanging it for, and it's not even an exchange, but what you are seeing instead is true abundance. And that is the place to move from.
Yeah, someone once said to me, there are no mistakes, there's just experiences. And I think that came from his higher self when he said that to me. Would you agree with that in some respects?
Yeah, there are no mistakes at all. It's all, and it's just an experience. There are, we can have misbeliefs, and we can create experiences that feel like mistakes. but at the root of it, there is nothing. There is everything.
Yeah, I have to remember that more, that, there are times when I'm going through issues, that I do, it does come into my brain or whatever part of me to say that, oh, I'm not my body. Just remember that, this is not what I think it is. And this is all just, none of this really matters anyway. But it's difficult to, always be in that place, or, and to keep that going when there's so much going on around you in that moment when, you're trying to use that to anchor yourself.
Absolutely. And that is the practice, right?
Regardless what anyone else around you feels.
Regardless of, right? And this is ego's playground. This entire experience is about separation. And so when we run off into the separation, all we're going to continue to do is get separation in our life. And so until we tether ourselves back into that oneness, and whatever that looks like for you, if you need to meditate, if you need to channel, if you need to burn incense, whatever that is, but as soon as we've stepped out of it, we're now in a place of lack. We're now in a place of needs. We're now in a place of panic, anxiety. That is where fear lives. And that's the state that we'll be living in.
When people have come to you, what's been their biggest need of help in a sense? Is it relationship? Is it work with the corona and everything right now? Or is it a bit of both? Or is it something else? Health?
Yeah, it's everything, right? It's life. It's, people who've come to me have been, had terminal cancer and are trying to figure that out. Obviously, relationships are like number one, though. Family relationships, and they're the things that like are so they really just shake us up, right? They're the things that really reflect back to us our lack or our judgments. And so you're seeing yourself in those relationships. And so that's why they're so hard, but they're also, the best way to experience yourself and to experience that oneness and to see it in other people.
Right. Yes. Yes. Because some relationships can be very soft, can't they? Do you know what I mean? They can be very gentle. Maybe, there's not, maybe at that particular point when that's happening, there's just, you're just at that place because you don't need anything more than that right now, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. And that's it too. Like, it's like, that is in your life because that needs to be in your life right now. The moment that you start judging that and saying, that person is wrong or not right or whatever it is, like that's when you've missed it. But it also doesn't mean that you need to stay in something just because that's the way it is.
yeah. There's always a positive side of something, isn't there? Something, there's always a positive side, and it's difficult to see it sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, to go even bigger than that, there is no negative side, right? Like you said, it's just it's experience. As soon as we start labeling it, then do that in your life. Well, that was a good thing, that was a bad thing that happened to me.
Very quickly, then, as well, let me just ask you about. Obviously, I know that you went through depression at some point as well, from everything that you've been through. But you don't find yourself so much touching that energy right now because of where you are with the work that you've done on yourself as well.
Yeah, yeah. And there are still days, and that's the thing. I think we think that spiritual enlightenment means all of a sudden you're good. It's like, no, like, there is this process of knowing, and there are still days where I'm like on the couch crying, and it's okay, but I now have, you know, tools at my disposal. I now have the ability to use meditation to do some channeling and to get myself back on track.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just tell us about the services that you offer as well and how they work.
Yeah. So right now, I'm just doing Thursday night groups. I'm not doing any personal services, but I might in the future. Right now, I'm just really wanting to teach and have people ask questions and have conversations like this, so that people can kind of work with me to get to the root of what's happening in them and get to the truth. And that's really what I'm trying to do with all of this is point to the truth or bring them to that truth.
So that's more of a group, a Zoom session that you would do, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing those right now.
And how many per group? What's the sort of maximum you would have in those? If
I do a maximum of 12 in
maximum
the
of
group.
12. Okay. Okay. All right. So when you do your group sessions, then, what's that like for people? I mean, do you find that people are okay to be open and they're not so private with the issues they're going through, or does it take time for people to sort of open up a bit for some people?
Yeah, it takes time. And I think, um, as they see other people being open about their questions, that they're able to open up. And I come in with, my lesson for that week, my weekly theme, and we really dissect it. And it's interesting what it brings up in all of us is kind of those weekly things, like you said, like needs would be the illusion of needs would be a theme one week, and we would, it's a very visceral reaction. That's what people say. They say, well, we have needs, like there are needs in these, and we work through that because, and that's mostly what I encounter is that, what I'm talking about is not something that you just understand and then walk away and you're all good. It's like this thing that we need to look at and we need to talk about and we need to dissect, and it took me years and years and years to know it.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you've been doing this for some time now, and like you say, you've done a lot of work on yourself as well. So, and what's that cost for people coming in that group?
That's free right now.
Oh, okay, okay. So, what do you charge for then?
I don't charge for anything
Oh, okay,
at the
interesting.
moment.
Right, okay. And you feel more comfortable with that right now?
You know what? I do right now. Um, I don't know what that will be in the future. I don't know what that holds, but but we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't really have any attachments to where this is work going to go for you, or?
I don't. I have, I want this to go somewhere. I feel like it what I am speaking about and what I'm doing is important, and I hope that I can reach the people that I reach. But I also am trusting that, the way that it's unfolding is the right way. It seems like I'm throwing caution to the wind, but
No, absolutely, yeah. Well, I guess that's a lot of trust to do that. And what is the group talked about in the sense for the coronavirus or the times that we live in now?
yeah, I think we're in very auspicious times. I think we're in times that are forcing us to look at ourselves, to look at the things that are important, to look at the things that we have been attached to. And I think we're also in times of heightened energy. And what I'm seeing is just more and more people having these spiritual experiences. I'm seeing more and more people having, energetic downloads and being really, one scared sometimes by it or really confused. And I remember going through all of those feelings. When John gave me the energetic download, I came back to him a year later in absolute distress, like crying, being like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're doing to me. And there's a lot of that's happening. The energy of the earth is shifting, the energy, you know, and so I think the lot we're talking about is about how do we kind of integrate that into our life? How do I deal with that?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of probably relationships breaking up. There's probably and I don't just mean personal. I mean all sorts of changes taking place relationship wise, and also new ones forming, and like they've always have done. But this is a bit more of a testing time. This one, do you know what I mean? And there's so many changes in people's lives, and I mean, I'm sure Canada's gone through its own,
Yeah.
crisis with everything with the lockdown. But have they spoken about this being the time that was talked about, maybe of change?
Yeah, I think some people are coming and they've been dealing with this since, December 21st, since the 90s, since we've been talking about these changes have been happening. And so, yeah, you get some of those. And then there's some people who come to my groups who have not heard of any of this, who are really just kind of coming into it like uh, doe-eyed and like, okay, what's happening here? So I'm seeing definitely the gamut of it. And the other thing that I'm seeing is it's almost like we can't not address this spiritual yearning anymore. We can't go on without addressing this piece of us that is calling for more. And I feel like that is showing up more and more and more for people. It's like something is calling for more, calling for attention, or calling for this. And I need to figure out what that is.
Interesting, right? It's yeah, and bet recently you've seen and heard more and more from people and their stories of that calling and the steps they're taking right now to to
Yeah.
move forward with that. Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be great to speak just very quickly to the wisdom keepers, if that's possible. Um, yeah.
Okay. Give me a few breaths here and then I'll bring them in. Yes, we are the wisdom keepers and we are happy to speak with you today. We want to give a brief introduction and then we would like to open it up for some questions. First and foremost, we thank you for taking the leap of faith, as this dear one mentioned. And we have spoken about this before, but we all feel as if it is a leap, as if we are jumping into the air, throwing caution to the wind, and hoping for the best. But let us tell you, dear ones, that this is in no way throwing caution to the wind, or leaping into the air and hoping that God, that love, that universe will catch you. And we say this because we feel as though faith is the piece that we are all missing in these times. We feel as though faith has been put into the world with mythology, with stories of folklore. But faith, dear ones, is not something that can just be drummed up from the imagination. Faith sits at the center of you, and it is the place in which truth and knowing are ultimately, profoundly grounded. And so when we say have faith, when you hear the term have faith, it is not about this idea that you are being frivolous with your beliefs. It is about this idea that you are coming in to this space that is a place of knowing. And we will open it up to questions here.
Well, thank you very, very much. So, is this a kind of group that I'm speaking to, in a sense?
Yes. So we are a collective group, an intelligence, if you will, of knowledge. And so we may have within us souls that have had experience on earth, that may have had experiences or lineages within some of your space-time. But we come in and we present ourselves in a way that is a collection, if you will, of this wisdom, this eternal wisdom.
Well, thank you. So, could I say that you've always been with Katrina?
Yes. We have always been with Katrina, and Katrina has always been with us. And we have a difficult time with the ideas of the separate experience, and we bring it back to this constantly, and this dear one touts these principles because this is something that we have been working with her with. But when we say that we have always been with Katrina and she has always been with us, we mean it on the most profound level, that we are never separate. And again, we know it might cause a few eye rolls out there, that seems like a statement where we are just dancing around the real topic here. But we must tell you, dear ones, that this topic is the real one. This topic that we cannot be separate, that we cannot be outside of each other, is the real topic. So yes, there is within the separated experience, within the space-time continuum, there is an ability for a soul to have a lineage and for souls to work together in groups. And yes, part of our collective has worked with Katrina in that capacity and has been with her in this lifetime in that capacity. But when we say at the most profound level that we have always been together, we have all always been together.
So one of the biggest messages that sort of Katrina has here is that, that the idea that she surrendered, many years ago when that sort of reached her darkest moment, that surrendering is a space, obviously, of getting to the I am, the idea that we're more than our body. If people were to embrace or try to embrace that idea, they've got to feel that, they've got to have it proven to them, in a sense. I don't know that's the right word, but they've got to, they've got to really come to terms with that's what this could be. And if they could just touch some of that space sometimes, that we're more than our body, how would that help us in just, day-to-day living, for example?
Yes. So this is it, isn't it? It seems as though we are living these lives that are separate. It seems as though we have spiraled out and we are having these experiences that are so separate. And this idea of seeing our oneness now, because we have spiraled out so far from the oneness, seems almost impossible. seems almost like we need some sort of a tidal wave experience in our lives to be able to come back to this oneness. But the truth is that oneness is available to you in every moment. And it does not mean that because you have misbeliefs that you will have to have some sort of monumental experience to get there. That this seeing your truth, your oneness, the I am, as you mentioned, is available in each breath, in each minuscule moment. And so if we put too much of our emphasis on this time-space continuum, on this undoing of all of our misdeeds, of undoing of all of our misbeliefs, undoing of all of our sins, our missing of the mark, then we will forget that our truth is not outside of us at a later date. We'll forget that it's also available to us in each moment. And so this practice that this dear one speaks of is the practice that we speak to her about almost every single day, in every single moment. When we get swept away with the tidal wave of the ego world, we need a tether to bring us back. And that tether has never left you. That tether is not at a future time. That tether is now. And so do not believe that you need to have an experience that looks exactly like this dear one. But believe in your oneness and come into your oneness, and you will start to see that the more you come back to this, every single time you come back to this, your world will become lighter and lighter. And you will start to see that every belief you have in this world, every attachment you have in this world, is nothing when compared to the truth of this knowing. And we call it a knowing. And we started when we started speaking today, we talked about faith. And this faith can be cultivated by experience, and it no longer becomes a faith. It becomes ingrained in a knowing. And this faith is not unfounded. This faith becomes grounded in this knowing.
But what about those maybe, even right now, that's maybe listening to this, or they know someone that's, my question is based on, from the sense that they're, suffering in pain. And, the last thing they want to do is to sort of go into that space of knowing that, okay, well, if I'm more than this, that's going to sort all my problems out. But, in the meantime, I'm suffering in so much agony, for example.
Yes. And we understand that is a difficult moment. And those are the moments, and those are the experiences. And this dear one spoke about it, but those are the experiences that are opportunities for us. Those are the experiences that will start to have us question the most fundamental questions. And the question may come up in that scenario: what is pain? What is experience? What is this moment that I am in? Because that pain becomes all encompassing, because that pain becomes all real, we can come into that and use that experience as a gateway into the detachment to the belief that we can be hurt, to the belief that we can be threatened. And you see that it is this belief, this misbelief in our threatenable nature, if you will, in the idea that we can be hurt, that keeps us in suffering. And it seems a little simple. It seems like you just believe that you are no longer hurt, and therefore you are no longer hurt. And we say that seems like a silly idea, because you have been told time and time and time and time again that you are separate, that you are a victim, that you can be hurt, that this experience is your only experience. And so when we come in with this message, it seems like it is not helping. But we tell you that if you start to use those fundamental questions of what is pain? What is this experience I'm having? When you are done that questioning, when you move through that, what you are doing is you are moving closer and closer and closer to the truth, to the answer that you need most to release you from that suffering.
Obviously, human relationships are a big part of, being here on planet Earth. And is that, as Katrina was saying, is that a sort of one way of us having sort of accelerated growth in a sense?
Yes. Let us use this example. If you are infinite oneness, if you are everlasting perfect oneness, you might wonder in that moment what it might be like to encounter yourself. And that is it. That was the idea. What would it be like to be outside of everything? What would it be like to be separate, to be outside of myself, to be outside of my oneness? And so now we have these experiences where you are, in fact, encountering yourself. And the thing about it is our lenses are skewed now because we have moved outside of oneness, because we now live in separation. Our lenses are all skewed, and it's as if we're looking through the world and we have blurry lenses. And so you are seeing yourself, but you are seeing yourself through this idea that you are separate. And you are seeing yourself through this idea that you can have shortcomings, that you can have failings, that you can have parts of you that are unlovable. And so now you are moving into these experiences with other, and you are experiencing that which is actually inside of you, this idea that you can be without, this idea that you can be separate, this idea that you can be unlovable. And so it is this very, very difficult thing to have these relationships. But if we are able to move, although we are separate, having this separate experience, if we are able to see, that is not outside of me. That is part of my oneness. I am simply having this momentary experience, interaction, but that is still me. That is still an aspect of me. Then the judgments, you lay down your sword of judgment, you put down your shield, and you can have the truest, most profound experience of experiencing yourself. So yes, this is the great opportunity. And that is the thing. If you are moving in this earth with this knowing, if you are moving in this experience with this profound knowing, then every single thing you encounter in this experience is a profound opportunity for awe, is a profound opportunity to see the majesty of the creativity of God without the blurry lens.
Where are we trying to head to? What is it we are trying to do by having these experiences like we are, but by having, the lives that we do? Is it to try to, have peace in the world in a sense, and peace in our relationships, and just come from a more loving perspective to each other? Or is it just have this rock and roll, movie style life? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And we laugh a bit because you ask, where are we heading? Where are we going? And the thing is that there is nowhere to go. And we know that seems, again, like an eye roll answer, like, yes, we understand there's nowhere to go, but we're having these experiences. And so that is it. So that is it. You have these profound, amazing experiences. You have these experiences where you fall in love. You have these experiences where you are able to watch the majesty of the ocean. You're able to see a tree grow in your yard. You're able to see your kids grow up. And it is an experience that is profoundly, it is fundamentally grown out of love. And if we start to layer in this judgment, if we start to layer in this place that we need to go, we've missed the absolute wonder of this experience. And so that is truly it. It is that this experience on earth is an opportunity for us to experience what it is to be without. But so many of us have come into believe that without is our truest nature. And we have forgotten that our truest nature is within. And so what this experience now is asking of us is to come back to that oneness, to get out of the cyclical nature, the wheel of Shiva of suffering. And as we get out of that, we get to experience the wonder of this without the layer of suffering, without the blurred goggles, if you will. And that is it. And we think that there always needs to be a purpose, that there always needs to be a goal. And although it is part of the experience here on earth, let it be that. Let it be the experience that is here on earth. But do not let that goal shake the center of you that is unmovable. Do not let that goal shadow that which is most important. Let that goal be what it is, a momentary perception, a momentary experience, and enjoy every single step, every breath along the way on that goal path. But do not let it become your God.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is fantastic. If there's any other thing that you might want to say, or whether that's it, that was perfect either way.
All right. We will leave you with this. We leave you with the idea that you are all fundamentally love, that you all have the opportunity to see this greatness within you, that this experience can be a dream that is lit up with wonder. We leave you with this in light and in love and in light speed in these light speed times, dear ones. That is our message.
Okay. Well, Katrina, thank you so much for that as well. Really appreciate that. Yeah. And just remind us of your website as well.
Yeah. So my website is www.katrinatrigg.com. Yeah, you can check me out there. And all of my videos are linked there, as well as my Instagram page and YouTube page.
Wonderful. Okay, we're going to link that in the description below as well. And that's been coming up on the screen throughout this interview as well. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on. So, I'm sure we'll be crossing paths again soon. And very interesting to see, you progress and to see how you go and carry on with the wonderful work you're doing. I get the feeling there's lots more that you've got coming up for you. So amazing things most probably. But just thanks for showing up as well. I guess that's the most important thing you can do with this work, just to show up.
You bet. Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for letting me share my story. It's such an honor to do that.